Hello, it's Dawn Michelle from Boho Tarot, and today I thought we would have a little bit of a play and a wander through the Alice the Wonderland Oracle. Now, this is not a new Oracle deck by any stretch of the imagination, but I've been working on adding some Oracle decks to my library that I feel bring something new and different. And the Alice the Wonderland Oracle was definitely up there on my list of decks that did something a little bit different than the other Oracle decks I have in my collection. So I have been doing some preliminary readings with this deck, and it's been really interesting because I've actually been using it in conjunction with another tarot deck to do dream work with, and this deck works really, really well for that. So I am going to talk about that a little bit in this video, as well as just take a flip through this deck and play with it with a couple of other tarot decks. So we're just going to kind of hang out and have a little wander through and play with the Alice the Wonderland Oracle. This is a Lucy Cavendish deck with artwork by Jasmine Beckett Griffith. So this is the new Blue Angel matte. We do keep saying new, however, it's not that new anymore, and it's been really wonderful to see that they're reproducing some of their older decks in this beautiful new matte cardstock. Here's the beautiful backs, which I do love. I am intending on edging it, maybe in a pink, just to, tap into that beautiful color there. Let's make sure the light isn't shining here in a strange way. Now, I have been working with this deck, so it's not in order. And I want to just kind of take a little flip through the cards, and we'll talk about the artwork and the key phrases and things of that nature. One of the things that I really like about this deck is actually more the key phrases that are on it rather than the artwork. Now, the artwork is pretty, right? It's beautiful Jasmine Beckett Griffith artwork. I do find that most people are like, they're either a fan or they're not. I actually was not a fan for quite a while. I was kind of like, I don't get the big eye doll thing. To me, they look like Bratz dolls. I seem to remember that being something that was a while ago, although Bratz dolls may still be a thing for all I know. But you can't deny, or at least I couldn't deny, the key phrases on this deck are very potent. So let's talk about those for a minute. So we have use your time well. Now, the imagery is fine. I mean, I will say it's like not my favorite. I do love Alice in Wonderland, and I love the stories. And I do have an Alice in Wonderland deck. I only have one because I kind of only feel like I need the one. That's a very specific thing and a very specific energy in my practice, and I just don't feel like I need a ton of decks that really tie into that energy. Sorry, I'm trying to get the light not to shine crazy on it. But we have this key phrase of use your time well, and it says make every moment count. That, I think, is a really important message. I know for me, whenever this card comes up, I'm like, okay, yeah, I know, I'm not using my time well. And this card is a good reminder for that. So for me, it's more about the key phrases that are actually on this card. So here we have follow the right white rabbit, curiosity meets opportunity. And this artwork does have, or this Oracle deck does have artwork that has sometimes borders, sometimes not, and I'm sure that has to do with the orientation of the original work of art. So rather than, kind of zooming in and cropping down a bunch of this imagery here, they've just chosen to kind of add that sort of border looking area, which isn't quite a border. It's like the image itself just kind of muted and probably overlaid with the background color. So generally that bothers me in a deck, but I find that for the most part, I don't use more than a couple cards in this deck, and so it's not too jarring. It would bother me if I was doing a very large spread, but I don't tend to do very large spreads with oracles anyway. So here we have who in the world are you? Getting to know the new you. I think that's great. This one is curiouser and curiouser. Discovery, inquiry, weirdness, and curiosity. So you can see the key phrases are a lot of times very tied into themes that we find in the Alice the Wonderland story. And I think that's one of the reasons why it kind of does do its own thing. It doesn't really repeat things that I have in other Oracle decks, which I really love. So here we have believe with strange encounters. Falling, the unknown, descent, momentum, change. Again, this deck is really about the keywords for me. Belonging to your own dream, create your own life. Here we have investigate, look closely, ask questions, think before acting. Some of these images I actually find a little bit creepy. Like we have the shadow across her eyes and it looks creepy. There's also kind of a difference in the, not so much the art style, but maybe the technique used. Now, I'm not an art expert by any stretch of the imagination, but this art looks different than this art. Like it looks like it's a different technique that's been used. And sometimes, again, that can be a little jarring for me with an oracle deck. Because it does create some inconsistency across the cards, even though this is a deck with all the same artwork by the same artist. It just, some of them have a little bit different feel, and I don't know if that's a different technique or maybe older pieces versus newer pieces, because like, you know, like any creative endeavor, the more you do it, the better you get at it. So here we have, I wonder what will happen next, ready to adventure, precipice of change, and pause before action. Nonsense, it's time to talk sense. I do like this card. I like that there's a nonsense card, because sometimes I need that reminder that like the thoughts in my head or whatever, like that's just utter nonsense. That's not even real. And so I love that this deck is a good reminder of that. Here we have uncertainty, choose who you will become. I love that card as well. We're all mad here. Everyone is a little different. Find the lesson, discover the purpose in a situation, trust that you are learning. No need to fear, remember how powerful you are. Messages for a rabbit, service to the animal world. Painting the roses red, covering up errors. I love this one too, because that is definitely something that I have a tendency to do, like in my journals and stuff. When I make a mistake, rather than just sitting with it and being okay with that moment of imperfection, I will cover it up with something else. And sometimes that's a good thing, because it allows you to start fresh, right? It allows you to begin again. And sometimes that is just not acknowledging your own imperfection. And that's definitely something I struggle with. So I love when this card comes up, because it is a very clear reminder to me to look at what I'm covering up, and am I doing that from a positive space? Am I doing that so I can begin again, or am I doing that just so I don't have to look at the mistakes that I made and that I don't have to acknowledge that they're there? So that one for me is a really potent card. Here's you can't go back to yesterday, be in the present. I love that. Keep your temper, don't allow anger to rule you. Shine bright like a candle, you will make it through this. I've actually pulled this card many times when I've been sick. So here we have growing up, wanting to grow and experience, rejection of perpetual youth. Do not drink the poison. Do not do things you know are bad for you. Again, this is another really great card. A lot of times when we get decks that have sometimes more positive or more affirmative messages, as a lot of oracle cards do tend to have, it doesn't really key into the fact that a lot of us do make poor choices and poor decisions. I know I do myself on a daily basis. You know, I can pick out 2 or 3 decisions in a day that I'm like, was that the healthiest choice for me? Probably not, right? They're little things, right? But it is a good reminder that to be mindful of the decisions and the choices that we are making, and are they good for us? Are they in alignment with our, you know, highest good and our whole self? And I think it's really important to have cards like that in a deck. So this is such a curious dream, grounding, returning to reality, and coming home. Choices, feeling blocked and restrained. So this is interesting, because I just talked about choices with the poison card, but this one is like the inability to choose, right? You're feeling blocked or restrained. Maybe you have choices, but you don't like any of them, or you're struggling with moving forward with those choices. Again, that's something that I often experience in my own life of feeling like I have choices, but I don't know which way to go, so I'm just kind of like stuck. And this imagery does reflect that well. I think this is a deck that, for the most part, the imagery actually does reflect the energy of the card quite well. But again, for me, it's all about these keywords or these key phrases. So here we have the right way, learning to create what you desire. Set your course, know where you wish to go, have a plan and the right direction. All must have prizes, trying to please everyone. Mortality, life is brief, bright, beautiful, and yours to live. Again, I love this. This is a little bit more of that shadow energy. I do feel this deck balances that really well. So here we have Lead the way, be a leader, show others how it's done. You can help others. Here's I want to be queen, standing your sovereignty, declaring freedom, and passing a test. I love that. Again, it's really a good one to remind you to kind of step into your own power. Never jam today, promises that never come to be, empty words, and not living in the now. Again, some of that shadow energy, which I love. You are rare and free. There are not many like you. Changed in the night. You have changed quickly. It's always tea time, eternity, endless moments, and repetition. Again, that's another great one. Wake up, it's your moment. Becoming braver, resilience, experience, growing stronger, and fresh perspective. Here we have clock time, time, pressure, in a rush. This one's come up for me several times as well. Follow your own good advice. Trust yourself and know what is best for you. I love this card as well because this really taps into, for me, what I use the tarot for, right? Which is to access my inner voice or my higher wisdom. And this is a wonderful card to remind me that when I access that, that's just one step of the process. Once I access it, then I need to do something with it. I need to act on it. And this is a good reminder of that. Here's manage to be glad, create your own happiness regardless of the conditions. Forget who you are, conditioning falls away, memory no longer defines you. Again, another great card. Keeping up, immense effort and advance. Law is not justice, rules that are not fair. I think this one's real appropriate for the world that we live in. Impossible things, working through disbelief, imaginative leaps, and fresh perspective. All in the golden afternoon, inspiration, creative spark, imagination, conception. A moment's regret, nostalgia, idealizing the past and fearing you've made a mistake. Again, another great shadow card. And nature, communication, flower energies, fairy energies, and elemental messengers. So yeah, it's all about the messages for me with this deck. And the guidebook, I will talk about it just in a moment, but the guidebook is really great, but I actually find that with a deck like this, I don't actually need to tap into the guidebook. Now, I don't have a ton of Lucy Cavendish decks, and I have heard other people talk about how you really need to use the guidebook in order to access the power of her decks. And I do believe, and again, this is just me saying something I've heard third person, right? So take it with a grain of salt, as everything. But I have also heard that Lucy Cavendish fully intends for you to work with her decks alongside the book. That is not typically how I work with Oracle. Most of the time I don't get into the guidebook and really use it as the foundational message for my work with that card. Most of the time I let the artwork and the keywords or key phrases, whatever's written on the card, spark my intuition. And that is how I choose to work with Oracle, because for me, most Oracle doesn't have a set structure like tarot. And so I'm not really bound by any constraints when it comes to Oracle, which sometimes makes Oracle easier to work with because I can kind of just let my imagination run wild. And a thing with a deck like this, with an Alice in Wonderland deck, I do feel like that is part of the power of the deck, is to let those intuitive messages come through and to let your imagination kind of have its run when you're looking at this artwork and these cards, because that's very much in alignment with the energy of the Alice stories. So I'm all for using these decks intuitively, and I think that that's an important way that I have found to work with these decks, or to work with this type of an Oracle deck. So real quick, we'll take a peek at the guidebook. Again, there's, typical introductory information, how to work with it and all that good stuff. This deck does include reversals. I have not shuffled reversals into my Oracle deck because I don't work with reversals with tarot, and I don't feel that I really need to shuffle reversals in, but that may change at some point. Anyway, that's some very me things, right? So here we have the card description, we have the title, a little black and white thumbnail, the keywords, and the thing that I love about this, and the thing that I have been kind of tapping into a little bit, is this little bit from which I believe is from the book. Now, I will say I haven't read this whole guidebook, so I could be missing some key important information. But again, I'm just sharing with you how I realistically work with this deck, which is really not to get into the book. I will glance at the book once I've done my reading and just kind of see what Lucy Cavendish has to say about the cards, but I definitely let my intuition and my own thought process come through first before I kind of look at what she has to say. But I do like the little bits from the book. There's a little bit about kind of what we're looking at and, you know, where that card kind of comes from, which is interesting. I mean, great, that's interesting. And it's definitely something that at some point I do want to read them all, but for right now, I'm really just kind of tapping into this I read the little bit from the book, from the stories, the Alice stories, and then I will glance at the divination message, which as you can see is real short. So if you are somebody who uses your guidebooks with your oracle, but you don't want to be like weighed down by all of the immense text that can sometimes come along with a single oracle card, this is really great because it does have this really short divination, and it has the reversed if you work with reversals with this deck. But you can kind of just shortcut to this if you just kind of want that something a little kickstart your own intuition. But again, to be perfectly honest, I haven't really used the book. Like I said, I glance at it. I will find the card and I will glance at this little bit from the Alice stories, and then I will glance at the divination. And that's about it. And the rest of the time I've been letting my intuition kind of have its run with what's going on in the cards, which again feels very in alignment with the Alice energy for me. You know, Alice is all about letting your intuition kind of and your imagination just kind of have its time in the sun, so to speak, and kind of following a prescriptive meaning for the card for me is counterintuitive to how I work with this deck. So, but again, that's a very me thing. So let's go ahead and move the book out of the way because, again, we're not going to be working with it. This is a typical Blue Angel deck. So because I have small hands, I generally have to shuffle my Blue Angel decks like this, which means all of my cards end up getting this kind of a bend. I don't mind. It doesn't bother me. Bends in my cards just tends to mean I've used them and I love them, so that's fine with me. I can kind of, you know, do a little bit of overhand shuffling. But again, it's that beautiful matte Blue Angel cardstock, so like I'm not complaining. Like it's good, I like it. If they could just get their books the size of the deck and the box the size of the deck, they'd have like the perfect setup in my opinion. Okay, so what I want to talk about is a little bit how I've been working with this deck, and the primary way I've been using this deck is in alignment with dream work, which I feel this deck is really well suited to. Now, I've watched lots of videos on this deck and I've heard of other people working with this deck in lots of various ways, relationship readings and creativity and kind of personal path. All of those things I think would work really well. I can't really speak to relationship readings because I don't do those. I don't read for other people, and I've been married for 25 years, so I don't really do relationship readings, but I have found this deck to be really potent for kind of diving into some dream work. And the deck that I've been using with it is the Cosmic Slumber Tarot. Now, this is a deck that I think I talked about pretty recently. Again, it's another deck that I do not use the guidebook. There's some interesting things in the guidebook in this deck, although I do have to say that like I'm getting old and I can't read that like without glasses and all that. And I've said before, the boxes annoy me. So I'm going to be making a bag for it. But this is a Ethos Sterling Liminal 11 deck. It's a bit of a hard shuffle for me, but I can shuffle it. And I am really enjoying working with this deck. It is glossy, as you can see, so it's going to catch the lights, but I'm just going to go ahead and do the usual split here, and we'll kind of talk a little bit about how I've been working with this deck as I kind of flip through the cards. Now, the thing that I've been doing with this kind of dream work, and generally, honestly, I have more than 3 cards on the table when I do this kind of work. What I've been doing is usually laying out the Alice the Wonderland shuffle pull card, and that is the main focus. That's like been the kind of underpinning of whatever dream work that I'm doing. And I do want to say it's not specific just to dream work. I have used these two decks for other types of readings as well, but I have found that for dream work, it's been working particularly well. So this would be what's going on underneath the dream, kind of in that under layer that's kind of pulling all the pieces together. And this is the kind of focal point message that I'm trying to get at. And then I'm using the Cosmic Slumber as a way to dive deeper into that. And like I said, generally I'm using more than 3 cards. So I generally have the 1 Oracle card on the top here, and then I will generally pull 4 to 6 of the tarot cards to kind of lay around it and give me a really detailed, fleshed out kind of idea of what what the message is within this reading. And really what's going on beneath the surface. And the way these decks work together is quite interesting. So we have, if we're using the Wonderland Oracle as the focal point, we have Who in the World Are You? And then we look at our tarot on either side to kind of flesh that out. Here we have Justice, and maybe this is keying me into maybe who you are in the world is not who you think you are, right? Maybe you're being letting other people's expectations layer over the top of who you're trying to be. And then in this 3 of Pentacles, I kind of get the idea of maybe looking for that person, that's those people that are going to support you in cultivating what it is and who it is that you want to be over here. Because right, this could be your support, and this could be you, and these are the things that you're trying to cultivate and put out into the world. So who in the world are you? Set aside what other people's expectations. Look to the people who do actually support you in a way that is helping you step into who you truly are, and let that be what helps you manifest in the world. Again, this is just, some kind of basic idea of how I've been working with these decks. But I find that they read really well together. And again, I like using more than just, 3 cards. I like using 4 to 6 of the Cosmic Slumber Tarot to really pull out a lot of information. And again, the messages and the key phrases, right? It's really, again, about those key phrases because the art styles are totally different in these decks. However, the colors actually work really well together, but energetically, they kind of have the same type of slightly off-center messages, as in, let's kind of step out of the normal box that you have in when you're looking at a reading, or let's step aside or sidestep or step beyond traditional meaning. And as it says here, follow your own good advice. Look at what's going on inside of you, what message this deck or these decks are pulling out of you. So for me, it's real important that I don't get into the guidebooks when I do this, because as much as I love a good guidebook, when I jump into a guidebook, I then start layering on other people's ideas. And the whole point of this is to get beneath the surface of what's going on within me. And so for me, it's real important that I just let my intuition be the primary way that I interpret these cards. So if I'm looking at keep your temper, don't allow anger to rule you. So here we have the 3 of Cups and the 7 of Cups. That's really interesting, really looking at that emotional realm, right? Maybe kind of this is you trying to keep all the different areas of your emotional landscape, kind of keep that all, combine it all in together, and then to maybe let it go out into these more productive ways, right? And you can see that my interpretations are totally different from what the traditional meaning of either of these cards are. But when I'm looking at it through the lens of keep your temper, that's what I'm looking at. Keep your temper, collect it, distribute it out in a more positive and beneficial way. So yeah, I love this this combination of these two decks together. I think they just work beautifully. I love the messages that I get. I'm again really enjoying the messages on the Alice the Wonderland Oracle, because it's so different than anything else that I have, right? And I'm not even looking at the artwork, because I have decks that have Jasmine Beckett Griffith artwork on it. I'm kind of just bypassing the artwork, and as far as I'm concerned, this deck could just be text only, right? I mean, the artwork's pretty, and we could definitely dive into the various details in the oracle card, but the way that I have been working with it is to tune into the words. So again, like I said, this could be totally a deck of just words, just the keyword and the key phrase on it, and that would be it, and it would work beautifully for me. But anyway, I'm really enjoying these two decks together, and that's it's kind of a surprise, and it's kind of not a surprise, because they both kind of inhabit this sort of dream-like, imagination-filled world, but the art styles are totally different, but they do read very cohesively together. Okay, so that's the primary way that I've been working with these two decks together. And let's just go ahead and grab another deck. Okay, so this time I have the Joie de Vivre. Look, the Fool's on top. And this is a newer, well, both of these are new decks, but the Joie de Vivre is very new in my tarot library. I just purchased it, and I've been having some fun getting to know it and playing with it. I absolutely adore the Paulina Tarot, and I've kind of avoided getting too many of her other decks because I didn't want to pull away from that connection that I have with the Paulina. But I was sick, and I just needed something to make me feel better. I needed something to bring a little bit of happiness, a little ray of sunshine, and so I purchased this, and it's been beautiful for that. I do feel like, again, we're inhabiting that world of curiosity here. So whereas with the other pairing we were kind of looking at maybe diving deep into those real deep subconscious dream state kind of messages. Here, these two decks together really inhabit the idea of letting our curiosity out to play. And I love that. So here we have you are rare and free between the King of Cups and the Nine of Swords. I love that. Like, really embody that energy and don't let, who you think you ought to be overshadow that. Again, I feel like because we're still working with the same oracle deck, right? I'm changing out the tarot decks, and that does slightly flavor the type of readings that I do. But overall, I'm still working with the same oracle deck, so I'm still kind of tapping into that same energy. And for me, the Alice the Wonderland energy is really about trying to inhabit who you are meant to be, who you are on a deeper level. That's kind of the underlying energy of this oracle deck for me. And so all of the readings that I do tend to kind of have a little bit of be geared toward that a little bit. So here we have a moment's regret between the Hangman and the Ace of Cups. I mean, that's really beautiful. Where are we getting stuck in the past, and where are we not moving forward with cultivating the energies that we want, cultivating the future in a way that is in alignment with who we are. And again, I think that these decks actually work really well together. Aesthetically speaking, I think they're actually a bit more compatible than the Cosmic Slumber Tarot. I think because the Joie de Vivre really has, again, that kind of strange, kind of Alice the Wonderland type of an energy to it and to the artwork. I feel like all the characters in this deck could be found in Wonderland, and so for me, they read really beautifully together. But again, this is a pairing that just kind of helps me tap into the curiosity of me and my life, and what do I want to cultivate, and how can I cultivate that in alignment with the idea of curiosity and imagination and play. And I love that the Alice Oracle does still have some shadow to it, so I do feel like I'm getting a pretty balanced reading overall, because the Joie de Vivre does read a little bit more positively for me, which is probably just the way that I interpret it. Which the Paulina is kind of the opposite. It doesn't lean real super positive for me. So it's a really nice balance between these two, having these two decks by the same creator. But I do find that the Alice kind of brings a bit of that shadow energy in a sense, kind of just bringing that balance where we have the light and the shadow kind of represented through these two decks. And I think they work beautifully together. I've really enjoyed the readings that I've done with these two decks. Okay, so let's take a look at one more. So the next deck that we're going to take a look at, here's the beautiful backs, is the Oh, Tarot of the Divine. And this is a deck that I've only just kind of started playing with, and I thought that maybe these two might work really well together because they both kind of inhabit that storybook realm. So I wanted to see kind of how they read together. Now, this is not a pairing that I've actually done, whereas the other two are pairings that I've been using throughout the month. This is something totally new, so I thought we would just have a play with it together and kind of see what we think, see how it goes together. Take a sip of my coffee before it gets cold. So here we have Painting the Roses Red, covering up your errors between the Three of Swords and the Five of Wands. I mean, that's kind of perfect, right? I don't read the Three of Swords as heartbreak. I read it as 3 is a number of growth. Swords are the suit of the mind. So in a basic sense, it's growth of the mind. So we get this idea of there can be growth from this idea of kind of this inner conflict and this wrestling with owning up to your own mistakes. There can be growth in that. So I think that's quite beautiful. Here we get Lead the Way, King of Swords, and the 10 of Coins. Be a leader. I mean, we have a king and a 10. I think that works well, really tapping into your own power there. So I wonder what will happen next with the 10 of Cups and the Lover. Beautiful. I probably didn't shuffle the Tarot of the Divine very well, but we're kind of just having a little play to see how they work well together. Aesthetically, I do think that they do look quite beautiful together, but really what I'm looking at is kind of that idea of tapping into story and what lessons can be learned within that idea of building upon a story. Where can you bring that kind of folklore and legend and history that we have within the idea of story, and how can you use that to help you navigate the place that you're living in now? This is beautiful. Use your time well, and we have it between the 5 of Coins and the 8 of Swords. Really this idea that you're not using your time well, and maybe that you are perhaps even being limited or inhibited by the fact that you're not using your time well. I think that's quite beautiful. So we'll just flip through a couple more just to kind of see what we're getting here. Uncertainty between the Page of Cups and the 4 of Cups. That's quite interesting. Here we have Keeping Up with the Empress and the 7 of Wands. Immense effort and advance. That's quite fitting. Again, I am still looking more at those key phrases on the Wonderland Oracle because I just really feel that is the deck's strong point, at least for me in the way that I work with it. Here we have Nonsense between the 4 of Swords and the Chariot. Is what you're going after utter nonsense? Maybe you need to take a look at that. I think the colors work really, really well together. I'm sorry, it just makes me giggle when something like this comes up. So forget who you are. Here's the Judgment card and the Devil. Forget who you are. Be who you're meant to be, not who your past says you should be, right? I love that. Here's Manage to Be Glad between our 2 knights. It's kind of cool. We'll just flip through the last few. Find the lesson between the Queen of Wands and the 9 of Swords. That's quite interesting. And set your course. The 2 of Wands and the 8 of Wands. That's beautiful. Set your course, plan where you're going, and then go do it. I think this is the last one. Becoming Braver with the Hanged Man and the Queen of Coins. Oh, one more. Follow the White Rabbit with the 6 of Coins and the Ace of Coins. So I have really been enjoying working with this Alice the Wonderland Oracle. I've been using it, as I said, primarily with the Cosmic Slumber as a way to kind of do some dream work, to kind of get beneath the surface of things. I think that this deck, and particularly the keywords and the ideas that are embodied within this deck, are really great for that type of work. The Cosmic Slumber really does pull out some wonderful messages, some deeper meanings from these particular cards. But then on the flip side of it, I've also been working with it with the Joie de Vivre, where I've been using it to kind of allow me to tap into my own curious, creative nature and to really explore some of the things that I want to maybe cultivate and create in my own life. I find that that's a really good pairing for when my creativity is kind of waning a little bit and I'm feeling a little bit lost in maybe what it is that I want to create, what I want to do, even maybe to an extent of what I want to put out in the world. I also find that this deck, this Oracle deck, really does for me embody the idea of kind of trying to figure out who you are, what you want to do, and like on a deeper level. Not just, you know, what do I want to do for work, or where do I want to be in my relationship, or, you know, what do I want to cultivate in the next 5 years, but really that underneath core of what is the essence of me, and how can I work to bring that out into the world in a really powerful and meaningful way that actually cultivates my life in alignment with that kind of inner being. And that's a lot. That's real heavy and a lot to put on an Oracle deck. And at first glance, I would have never said that that would be what this deck would be great for. But that is what I found. It really does function well for me in that sense, and it really taps into some really unique and interesting keywords in that way, and it works beautifully for that. So when we take that and we pair it with the cosmic slumber, you know, I can really dive into that dream work and kind of get beneath the surface. I can use the Joie de Vivre to really tap into that curious energy and bring out some of that creative work that needs to happen in order for me to inhabit and to truly resonate with that inner part of me. And I can also use the Tarot of the Divine to help me kind of suss out where my story lies in all of that. And so I think these decks actually really work beautifully together. Again, full disclaimer, I haven't actually used this one with this Oracle deck. That was kind of just a play, definitely something I'm going to be doing moving forward. These two, however, have kind of just been hanging out with the Alice the Wonderland Oracle, and it's been really beautiful working with them together. To say that this deck has surprised me would be an understatement, because it really not only has surprised me, but it's kind of blown me away in the depth that is within this particular Oracle deck. And again, you know, not to belittle the guidebook is quite wonderful, but I found that in a deck like this, what I really want to tap into is that intuitive message that's coming through, because that to me is what Alice embodies. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this kind of wander through the Alice the Wonderland Oracle and talking a little bit about how I've been working with it and the decks that I've been using with it. I would love to know if you have this deck and what your experience has been with it, so please feel free to share with me in the comments below. In the meantime, my friends, thank you so much for joining me today, and I look forward to sharing with you again soon.